This was my first ever trip to the South, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect. Charleston was a good place to start, as it strikes a balance between the modern and the traditional. I knew I couldn't capture Charleston's rich history in just a day. So instead, I focused on its neighborhoods, met a few of its people, and tried some amazing southern food. I had read about Hominy Grill having some of the best grits in the world, so I made that my first stop. The breakfast was excellent, and I'll admit, the grits were some of the best I've ever had. But the most surprising part of the experience happened when I opened the door to enter the restaurant. I was the only non-white person in the entire restaurant. Growing up in LA and now living in DC, such an occurrence was very rare. Upon leaving the restaurant, I was very eager to learn more about Charleston and its people. I headed over to Charleston City Market to learn about sweetgrass basket making from a lady who's had it in her family for generations.
Sometimes the smaller one you can finish it in a day or so, or maybe 8 to 9 to 10 hours. And sometimes they're larger. Of the larger basket, they make like 3 and 4 days and longer. Like the one I'm working on here, I started yesterday, but I'll finish it today. The one I'm doing now is taking the bulrush and the sweetgrass and the palmetto and combine it all together and working it into a sweetgrass, into a sweetgrass basket, into a fruit basket. And this will take me another two hours. I've been doing it like 50 years or more. My mother taught me when I was just a little girl, way back. Teach my girls, but they don't like doing it.
I also met Melissa, a native of South Carolina, who shared her experience with me growing up.
I grew up in Marion, South Carolina. It's a small town off I-95 near Myrtle Beach. College in South Carolina, and then spent a couple of years in North Carolina in graduate school, and then I moved back to Charleston. So I've been in South Carolina most of my life. I've studied abroad a couple times, but I do like South Carolina. I like the weather. I like the size of the towns and the communities. Marion had about 8,000 or 10,000 residents at the time. It's about that now. About half black, half white culturally. Everybody got along really well. It was a couple of things that were interesting to me after I left that town that I didn't really notice when I lived there. One of them was that the neighborhoods were very segregated. It was white neighborhoods versus black neighborhoods, different sides of town. Again, never a big deal, never really talked about when you lived there, but something that when I moved to other towns and saw more integrated neighborhoods, I thought that was interesting about my hometown. We also had there was a slight racial unrest. It's not a great memory, but something that was worth sharing in my high school when there was February's African American History Month every year, and there was a big assembly in the gym, and about 5 or 6 white guys had their parents sign them out that afternoon so they didn't have to go to the assembly. And you know, there was a debate about their rationale behind it, but needless to say, a lot of people took offense to that. And so the next week, the NAACP came to our school, and they had called a bunch of TV news stations, and a lot of the entire black population of the school, which was 60% of the school, walked out of lunch period and stood in the front of the school, just silently, just stood there, walked out, had the TV cameras there as a protest against these white students walking out on their African American History Month assembly. And that was really the only time there was any kind of racial unrest. But that's something that really stands out in my memory, because it really shouldn't have happened. It was awful, and we were all friends, and then we weren't, because that was really tense. They also had a black and a white homecoming king and queen for years at my school, up until at our high school. Which stopped a few years before I was in high school. My brothers went to high school there. There was a black and a white homecoming king and queen, which was voted on, but you had made sure you had 2 instead of the vote, you know, just going for 1. So luckily some of those things already started to change. Now the town is still really beautiful, lots of live oak trees, lots of old homes. What's happened now is that the public education system there has gotten really a lot worse. There have been a lot of people leave the town. There's not a lot of employment. It's The recession obviously is hitting it really hard, but even before that, this current economic downturn, it had really changed there. So the education system there is really not good, and it's not pulling it back a lot of people my age to live there, because we don't want to put our kids through that education system. It was pretty good when we went there, but now it's not great at all. So that's unfortunate.
Instead of following my guidebook's recommendation for lunch, I wandered into the neighborhood and asked around for a good local place to eat.
My name is Sandra McCray. I'm the owner of Davis. David, the guy, my better half, he died in April. So I'm just continuing to go on with his little dreams and everything like that. The dream we had together. They started back in 1987. 1987. Me and my better half started it out in 87. We were going down since. Changed a lot. Just like life, everything changes. So, and we had to change with the times, you know. Prices kept going up and so did we. You know, so that's the way it is. Just like everything else, everything just changes. My dad died, and he was like, move on the stuff, move on the car. So we moved here, and then I moved my mom. He was a beautician next door. Her beauty shop is next door. So it's like a family corner.
I'm typically not a fan of fish, but I ate every last piece of Sandra's fried fish sandwich. As explained to me by locals, anyone living south of Broad Street is extremely wealthy. Anyone living south of Calhoun Street is just wealthy. And people who live north of Calhoun Street are living in poverty or close to poverty. And these streets are all within close walking distance of one another. I took a few minutes to sit on one of Charleston's famous swinging benches to reflect on the day and wonder if the next generation will learn from history and break all of these divides. But for now, I'm off to the next stop.
These tournaments of journalists and live by the pen, now die by the sword. Tears through your gore, got you through the mic cord. It's fine blade explore, but just fine wine is poured. Now toast to this, as we pour a little out for those that be approaching this, be approaching this, be approaching this, be approaching this, be approaching this.